I think we can promise you that you'll no longer be the forgotten outpost. So right now I want to introduce Vietnam veteran Bill Gish, who is helping people upgrade their discharges at Coffee Strong. Bill?
When Alex asked me to speak at this event, I started thinking about coffee houses. And I go back to Vietnam Vets Against the War, and I was a member of a chapter in St. Louis that tried to start a coffee house. We never really got it off the ground as a coffee house. We bought a building. It wound up kind of being a commune. And some of our members lived there, and we would have poetry readings and plays and things like that. But we still called it a coffee house, and we still did the sort of things that coffee houses did back then and do today. And that got me thinking about so many continuities there are between those days and these days. Just some of them that have been mentioned tonight. You know, there's Vietnam Vets Against the War, now there's Iraq Veterans Against the War. And the two are very much crossbreeded, inspired by the same motives. And I'm afraid I got away from anti-war work for more than 30 years. Came back to it now because I started seeing that they were treating the vets from these more recent wars at least as bad. And now I know worse than they treated Vietnam veterans. And to show you how true that is, and tell you a little more about myself at the same time, I'm going to parallel my own case as a Vietnam combat veteran, disabled veteran, and an Iraq veteran that I've started to work with. And I'll just use his first name, confidentiality reasons. His name is Alex. And Alex and I actually had very similar injuries. Alex was in Fallujah as a Marine and was hit by a round in his forearm, and among other things, totally shattered the bones in his arm, and he now has plates in his arm to replace those bones. And he had the same sort of nerve damage that I had, and had to have the same sort of surgery I had, which was tendon transplants, because if the radial nerve is cut, you can't lift your hand, you can't give anybody a finger anymore, you can't lift your fingers. And they did wonderful things in my case, and I can twiddle my thumbs, shouldn't be able to do that, but I can. In Alex's case, his arm and his hand is still messed up. In my case, they gave me the strongest anti-pain medication they were giving at the time, which is Darvon, and I didn't get addicted to Darvon. They gave Alex Percocet. He became addicted to Percocet, thanks to the military. But of course, I mean, they were trying to relieve the severe pain he was in, but still, he wound up, he was supposed to go to a bed in a mental ward because he was having psychiatric problems along with it, which were probably PTSD related, but wasn't recognized. And they didn't have a bed. 3 days later, he was arrested for trying to fake a prescription for Percocet. He accepted a discharge in lieu of a court-martial, which is, and if you're not familiar how the Army uses, and the military uses that in lieu of a court-martial, it's sort of like they scare you with saying that they're going to court-martial you and you'll do hard time breaking up rocks at Leavenworth. And you know, if you accept a discharge in lieu of that, all they'll do is ruin the rest of your life. but you'll get out of the military. So he was given a bad conduct discharge in lieu of court martial. And he's since been in kind of petty, pathetic, I would say, trouble with the law. He shoplifted at a hardware store, and then after serving the short jail sentence he got for that, he went back to the very same store, shoplifted, got caught, and is back in jail now. And it's going to be hard for us to upgrade his discharge because the board that upgrades discharges assumes the military does everything right. And you have to prove that they did. And if you accept the discharge in lieu of a court martial, the only way you can get them to upgrade your discharge is on the grounds of clemency. Well, they like to grant clemency to people who clean up their act and can show that their life after the military is they've straightened themselves out. Well, Alex hasn't. So I'm not sure we're going to be able to upgrade his discharge. But they ruined his life. If they had had a bad for him, he never would have offended. If they had not gotten him addicted to Percocet, and as far as I can see, just took him off of it, and he wouldn't have been craving the drug. And in my case, though, I got $1 million wound. It's paid for my car payments ever since I got out of the military. I don't have anything to complain about. And I see especially what other people have to complain about. But that's why I'm doing discharge upgrade work. And just as one other little expression of the continuity, well, there are two things I want to mention. One of them I didn't have until I saw one of your slides, Malachi, the one where you have the guy in the pill box. It reminded me so much of the guerrilla theater kind of things that Vietnam Vets Against the War used to do. I love it. That's just, that you guys are doing that sort of thing. But, that's great. And I know people on the street just eat that stuff up. They did for us too. So, congratulations.
Thank you.
And then there was a reference earlier, I think when Jerry was speaking, to Winter Soldier hearings. And Vietnam Vets Against the War tried briefly they thought about changing the name of the organization. I'm not sure if we ever did, but we were going to call ourselves the Winter Soldier Organization. I imagine most of you are familiar with where that expression comes from. And originally, when Thomas Paine talked about summer soldiers and sunshine patriots, and how the winter soldiers with George Washington and Valley Forge were the ones that really deserved everybody's praise. That was sort of support the warrior and sort of even support the war, but that's been co-opted by the anti-war movement, and now a winter soldier. There are a lot of winter soldiers in this room. I want to thank all of you, and I hope I qualify as a winter soldier too, still. And I want to end by reading a poem that a friend of mine in Vietnam Vets Against the War in St. Louis wrote, and was